And hello, everyone. I'm your host, Hena Zuberi, and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. Thank you for watching us on Muslim Network TV, America's only Muslim-focused TV channel. You can watch us 24/7 on Roku, Apple, Amazon Fire, and various other social media channels. Medical debt is a growing problem in the United States, with many Americans experiencing financial instability and even bankruptcy. According to a 2016 Kaiser Family Foundation and New York Times survey, more than 1 in 4 Americans had trouble paying a recent medical bill. And this can affect anybody. And when medical debt piles up, this can lead to difficult financial decisions for people, such as needing to cut back on food, clothing, and other basic household items. I wanted to discuss this in detail because the reality is that the problem cuts across age groups, educational levels, religious groups, males, females, even people who would be considered financially responsible can be affected by medical debt. More than half of Americans with medical bills and medical debt had no other debts listed on their credit reports. In August, consumer finance company Credit Karma conducted an analysis of nearly 20 million members in the United States. So now we're talking about post-COVID, and found that they have a total of $45 billion of medical debt in collections, which averages to about $2,200 of debt per member. To discuss this and much more, we're honored to have with us Allison Sesso. She is the Executive Director of the Human Services Council of New York since March 2014, and previously served for many years as the Deputy Executive Director. HSC is the association of 170 nonprofits delivering 90% of human services in New York City. Thank you so much for being here, Allison. And I understand you are also with RIP Medical Debt Relief. Could you tell us the relation, explain to us your background and a little bit more about yourself and your work?
Sure, absolutely. So I left, actually, today is the anniversary of me starting at RIP Medical Debt and having left the Human Services Council, which you referenced earlier, literally a year ago. What a time to start at a new organization in the middle of a pandemic, and particularly one focused on both a healthcare and economic crises that that COVID really sits in the middle of. RIP Medical Debt is an organization that has an incredible mission. We literally buy medical debt off the market, and I really appreciate all of the ways in which you describe the burden of medical debt, because that is exactly why RIP exists. What we do is we buy medical debt off the market, and we absolve people. We send letters out that say, we bought your medical debt and you are free and clear of it. And the reason why I made this transfer from being at the Human Services Council, which really focused on providing social care within the communities. I represented, all these nonprofits that were working in New York's communities to, provide safety net services to people, and to make sure people had a decent way of life. But what I saw is that people struggled really financially, and that the social determinants of health, when you think about health outcomes, had a lot to do with the economic circumstances people found them in. And then, sort of ironically, the reason why people are in that financial bind, in large part, is because of medical debt itself. So it's a very circular problem. And so when I heard about RIP Medical Debt, I thought, what a great way to make sure that communities have this financial burden lifted off of them, so that they can have better social outcomes and better health overall.
So this is fascinating. So tell me how this works. It says on your website that you guys eradicate medical debt at pennies on the dollar. So
Mhm.
if I had medical debt and I came to you, and do I need to be based in New York? I could be anywhere in the country.
Oh, yes. We are nationally focused. So I happen to be based in New York, but our team is all over the place. And, our headquarters are in New York, although these days our headquarters are our homes.
Mhm.
But yes, so it's an interesting model. One thing I would like to point out is that you cannot come to us and ask us to relieve your debt. It is totally blind. Um,
Okay.
we find the debt first in big portfolios. So we go to the source, we go to the hospital, the large physicians group, the secondary market, right? Where
Mm.
so debts are sold by hospitals to debt buyers, and then they try to collect them. But they're
Mhm.
sold for pennies on the dollar because their value on the market is low due to the fact that a lot of the people cannot, as you referenced earlier, pay these
Okay.
debts. And so we can buy them for pennies on the dollar. So we're buying millions of dollars worth of debt for a very low cost. And as you referenced earlier, it's every dollar that we on average every dollar buys $100 worth of medical debt. So it's pretty significant how much debt we can relieve with a very small amount of donated dollars. And that's our model. Essentially, we get people to donate dollars to us, and then
Mhm.
we use those dollars to buy debt off the market, and we alleviate it. And we've actually alleviated nearly $3 billion worth of debt to date, and I'm very proud of that.
Wow, $3 billion. So if this was my debt, would I ever know that you did this for me?
Yes, absolutely. One thing, I'm glad you asked that. We would contact you. What we would
Okay.
do is but it would already be done by the time we contacted you. We will
Okay.
basically send you a letter that says, here's the debt that we bought, and you are free and clear of that debt, and we would, make sure that it's off your credit report and you're free.
Oh wow, it's like a either a Christmas present.
Yes, it's like it's like you won the lotto without ever buying the ticket,
Buying a
right?
ticket. This is brilliant, and this is just amazing. I mean, I'm just thinking of so many faith-based organizations who are looking to donate, and so this would be definitely something that we should be. I'm talking to my audience. Let your mosques know about this. So we have so much sadaqah money sitting in our mosque bank accounts, and this is a way that we could be helping out Americans across the country buying out their debt. Recently, there was a Muslim doctor, I believe, in Alabama who
I saw
had,
that.
yeah, and that was such a heartwarming story because it can really devastate people's lives. How many families are affected on a yearly, who have to choose between feeding their family and having to pay these debts? Could you share some stories with us?
Well, first of all, I would just say that I have to say one of the best parts of my job is getting letters back from people
Mhm.
that are acknowledging the gift that we've given them through this, act of kindness, random kindness. And I would also really I appreciate you talking to your audience about using RIP as a way of giving back. I mean, certainly, faith-based communities have really been a big part of RIP and have come to the table in a really meaningful way. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that I agree with that. I think it's a great way for faith-based communities to be supportive of the communities at large, and we'd love to look at more partnerships. Um, I mean, look, the numbers are bad and they're getting worse.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's like 1 in 5 Americans can't pay for food and or other necessities at this point. And I hope that no one out there that has a medical bill picks a medical bill over feeding their family. That's just not something people should be doing. Honestly, I want to be clear that that's not. I would not suggest that people make that choice. Um, at the end of the day, I think that there's just a lot of an increasing number of people who are in that situation in which they have this medical bill, it's hanging over their head, and but unfortunately, in some instances, judgments or it can go to court, and so you don't have a choice but to pay it. And
Mm.
that's really what we're trying to stop from happening. Is those collections efforts that really undermine people's ability to meet the basic needs of their families.
And some of these folks have insurance. But medical. Can you, in
Yes.
the work that you've done in human services as well as with RIP medical debt, can you share with us what's there's a lot of I'd say false accusations against some of these families, and there's a lot of like stigma. There's in people will talk about insurance in a manner that is sometimes I feel like is really lacks empathy for our own citizens, the people of our own country. So I'd love for you to dwell a little deeper in that.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a uniquely American problem.
Mhm.
It is because of the way our healthcare system has developed, and so medical debt is actually a feature of that system, which is very unfortunate and real. And what you said really hit the nail right on the head, which is that medical debt, it hits all kinds of people. I really hate the idea of this self-responsibility that somehow you're responsible for medical debt. Anyone can be sicker than their means, and
Mhm.
that's true. And if you have insurance, it does not protect you. The insurance is increasingly covering less. The
Mhm.
deductibles are increasingly high. Um, and the networks are smaller, so the chances of you accidentally, and it's not exactly when think about when you need medical care, you're in your worst possible position. You're
Mhm.
physically in pain, you may be actually not cognizant. Like, there's lots of ways that you could be getting medical care and not have your wits about you in that moment, to be negotiating and navigating the healthcare system and just determining whether or not the person caring for you is actually in your network. I mean, what a
Mhm.
ridiculous concept, right? So, one thing I do tell people is, as much as possible in advance, try to make sure that you have someone that's your advocate, that's able to support you in those moments, because that does actually matter to where you end up at the end of the day in terms of medical bills. But
Mhm.
frankly, it shouldn't be this way. And so, having health insurance does not mean that you don't end up with a medical bill. In fact, a lot of the bills that we're seeing are a result of people not being able to pay their high deductibles. A lot of the medical debts we relieve are like $1,000, and to me,
Mhm.
that's not a problem of the healthcare system. That's the economic problem that you're talking about, right? That people can't afford $1,000. That's part of the problem that we're facing. It's a problem of economics, not just of healthcare.
Yes, the healthcare. Can you share with us how the pandemic has affected your work?
Well, well, like everyone else at RIP, most people are working from home, so we're not
Mhm.
doing a lot of in-person things. But in terms of our focus, well, we did want to. We really wanted to figure out how to show up for this in this moment, and we did actually create a fund that was focused on trying to prioritize people who were working on the front lines. So the healthcare providers, the people working in home care, people even that are doing the services that help you, allow you to go grocery shopping and things like that, and to try to identify those people's debts, and alleviate them first. So we did this thing called the Helping COVID Heroes Fund. So I was really proud of that, and we were able to abolish quite a bit of debt for those individuals, and we're continuing to do that now. Although we're shifting away from that fund overall. And what we'd like to do, and we haven't been there yet because it takes a while for the debt to cycle through, is to identify COVID specific debt. But one of the things I would say is that we've realized how important the work that we do is in this moment. COVID has increased the number of people without health insurance. And while I said before that having health insurance makes a big difference, that health insurance does not make. Oftentimes, you can still have problems when you have health insurance. It still does matter if you have health insurance. And when you don't have health insurance, you can bet you're going to have a real problem and medical bills. And so the number of people who have lost health insurance is significant. I have a stat that's it's almost 5.5 million Americans between February and May of 2020. Now that's staggering. And so that's really what I think we're looking at RIP, is how much more can we do given the extent of this problem. At the same time, I do wish that we didn't exist and that we didn't have to do this work in this way. I'm not hearing you.
Sorry about that. I think I
Okay.
was muted. So we had a comment by a viewer. I'm feeling so emotional. I've been having sleepless nights and praying to God to help me pay off my huge medical debts. And here I came along this link, and today I'm watching this now. So what would you say to someone like Aminata?
So unfortunately, I wish I had a great answer of like, send me your bills and we'll figure it out. We don't have access. Like I said, we were constantly looking for access to medical bills.
Mhm.
We do have some information on our website, which I think is important to help you navigate what to do once you do have a medical bill. I
Mhm.
think people have to realize that they can negotiate those bills, negotiate them down. They can spread out the ability to pay. They can ask the hospital if they qualify for charity care. A lot of times you have to proactively ask that question. So I think that there are tools that people should be individually deploying. At the same time, unfortunately, medical bills don't just magically disappear unless RIP happens to happens
Mm.
to be able to buy them up. So I would suggest looking at those things, and what I would also say is any healthcare providers or systems out there, please contact us. We really do want to help as many people as possible, but the only way we can do that is if we have access to those debts. So
Okay.
hospitals, large physician groups, please contact us because we would love to talk to you about how we could obtain your debt and really relieve these people who are not going to be able to pay.
Definitely. And this is something that a lot of us don't know. When we go to the hospital, and especially at a time like that, especially in emergencies, you're not thinking about these things. You're not thinking about who is in your network, who's not in your network, whether what you'll have to deal with these bills later. And to and these are personal stories, right? Like when it really can knock someone off the path. They might be doing well in their lives, and just something like this comes along suddenly and can be such a big test. I see on your from your website also that these debts are also geographically concentrated in something called hotspots. Could you tell us more about those?
Yeah, so those are the areas that we have active campaigns in. It means that
Mm.
there's debt that we've identified, so that we have access to the debt, and that there's donors that are actively fundraising to alleviate those debts. So any hotspot, I would ask people to take a look at those campaigns and think about contributing, particularly if they have. A relationship to that area. As you said earlier, if there's a group of people who want to come together and alleviate debts, those hotspots are areas that we have debt in, and that again, there's active campaigns. But I would say also that on a national scale, there's debt across the United States, and there are many places we don't have access to debt. But because sometimes I find that donors are interested in just like the area that they're from or that they have a connection
Mm.
to, and that's all well and good. But in this moment, especially in the United States, I think it's time for us to come together. And that means that, supporting people that don't necessarily live in the same community as you do.
Mm. Definitely. That's really powerful because, and when I think about these are the sort of things that instead of buy, we live in such a consumer-based society. We're always buying more stuff, gifts for people. Is there a way that if I wanted to gift a gift to somebody, right? Like I could make a donation on their behalf on the website. Is that something? Is that a campaign?
Absolutely. Yes, we love that, and it happens all the time. And I
Mm.
think it's a great gift. It's the gift of medical debt relief.
Mm.
Yeah, there is absolutely the opportunity to make a gift of medical debt relief to people and do it through our website, and the person would be notified and be thanked by us and have all the accolades. So I think that's a wonderful idea, and I agree with you that we are consumer driven, and to me this is an issue of health equity, right? I mean, So it's such an important thing for people to be thinking about when they're thinking about how to spend their money, and how to, think about their own philanthropy. This is an issue of everyone having access to healthcare in an equitable way, and medical debt demonstrates that we don't have that currently, and this is a fix to that.
Definitely. And when you compare this to the United States, to other developed quote unquote countries, we fall so far behind. And some of it is what you're talking about, income equity. What other aspects contribute to this?
I mean, honestly, I always find it interesting when people compare our statistics with other countries, that because at the end of the day, the difference is that our system is a for-profit based system compared to a government-led system. I mean, that's mostly what we're comparing ourselves to, and so that's comparing apples to oranges. The incentives are different. Everything is different in those two systems, and the drivers of the costs and hospital actions, medical supplier actions, insurance companies. I mean, all of that is driven by our for-profit system. And so, it's a hard thing to answer and to compare those things. I mean, obviously, on the face of it, for the amount of money that we spend on medical care overall, and for what we get for it, we are not getting a good deal. That's for
Mm.
sure.
Oh, wow. Um, some of our so one of the questions that we are asking ourselves as a human rights organization, we believe healthcare is a human right. It should be available for human beings in this country, no matter what their status is, especially being one of the richest countries in the world, leader in human rights for the rest of the world, many cases. So now that this new administration is here, and we've been thinking about how we can push for uh, uh, different aspects of human rights in with the new administration, and healthcare is a top concern for so many Americans.
Yeah.
What are your expectations from the current administration? What legislations are you watching up for, being in this industry?
Yeah. So I think I could tell you what we're doing now isn't working, right?
Mhm.
I think, there's a lot of criticisms of the what Obama accomplished, and at the same time, I think what he accomplished was a very big step forward, and has more positives than negatives. And the United States works on compromise, and that's what that bill was. That's as far as we could get at the time that we could. I think we need to build off of that, and we need to take some other steps forward. I've heard the administration that's currently in office, Biden has had talked. He certainly has acknowledged the healthcare situation, and having come from, having worked in the Obama administration, obviously as the vice president, I think he's acutely aware of what did and didn't get accomplished in that. He's not going to go out and, as far as, obviously, we didn't pick Bernie Sanders, right? So we're not we're not as a country, I think, going to be having universal health care overnight. I I do think that government has to play a bigger role in healthcare, and probably has to take on more of the costs. Does that look like a additional government option? I mean, that's certainly one of the things that he has talked about. I think that would be very interesting and helpful to explore that and what that looks like. I think that making health insurance in that way more affordable for people, and it wouldn't just help the patients, by the way, it would help the hospitals. I mean, you know, a lot of people ask me about, they try to villainize somebody in this equation. And I don't really see that there's an obvious villain. I can't say that you can blame the hospitals. The hospitals, I mean, look what they've done during COVID. They've really stepped up and have put themselves out there, financially and otherwise, to come to rise to this occasion. We need those hospitals. They're important for our communities. And yes, they do sometimes sue patients, and I don't think that's it's a great thing that happens. However, at the end of the day, they do need money to operate. Now, are things overpriced? You can have all of those debates, but at the end of the day, the less people able to pay, the worse off the hospitals are going to be, because they're going to have to provide cheap or discounted or free care to people. And they also have to make ends meet in order to continue to exist. Similarly, the insurance company, people often want to make them the bad guys. And I understand that. And sometimes I'm sure that they are, and their actions can be, and individually, but as a whole, insurance companies are only speaking to the increasing prices, and they have to look at their bottom line. So everyone is acting according to a for-profit healthcare system that they're operating in. And ultimately, we have to look at that and understand that government may need to play a larger role. And again, my sense is where we are now as a nation, that looking at a government-run option would be a really big and important step forward and help a lot of people. And I do hope that that gets prioritized in this administration.
I hope so too. Especially when you see now post-COVID really exposed the weaknesses in our system, where who were we missing, where a lot of people think we have a safety net, and the whole the tears in that safety net. So that is something that the learning from that, and not ever being in that position again. My husband is a physician and in New York, and just the sort of, not in the beginning, not being able to get PPE, and in servicing during a pandemic, just really like brought and it was lovely seeing, after a long time, seeing doctors and nurses and healthcare workers and hospital workers being recognized as the heroes they were and
Right.
are. But
Right.
it was also very, very scary to see that they were putting themselves in harm's way without the proper equipment and that was needed. So this is
And their
something.
families. Yeah. I mean, it's great that we yelled every night at 7 o'clock, and that was actually really heartwarming, but we need to do more than yell out our windows to support our healthcare workers. And actually, you bring up a good point, which is the patient and doctor relationship is impacted by our system, right? Because it's very awkward. Like, first of all, patients often don't get care because they're concerned about the bill at the end of it. So they could get sicker or worse off. I mean, I think we saw this with COVID. Some people died in their homes without getting care because they didn't want to risk getting a bill. They could be embarrassed because they have an existing bill with a provider. And physicians, it's awkward for them. They have to be thinking about the payment that's going to come in ultimately. And that weighs into the equation of the type of care that they're giving somebody. That's not equitable.
Definitely, it certainly isn't. And let's hope for some legislations to pass through that really address some of these core issues. And we get, I think the Democrats definitely have no excuse. They have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the presidency. So hopefully people will realize that this is a chance that they cannot miss. Now, when a debt is forgiven, it is usually counted as income and is taxed. So how does RIP medical relief help those who can afford to pay medical debt and those taxes if the debt is forgiven?
Yeah, great question. I'm so glad you brought that up. There is no tax implications for us because it's being relieved by a third party that has no interest in the situation. And so they're actually, when RIP, because of our model and because we're a disinterested third party, we are able to forgive debts and there is no tax consequence. So it is not a normal thing. So it's actually just literally free and clear with no follow-up and nothing happens. So it is a great question and a little bit wonky, which I love, and into the weeds, but that's the truth. With RIP, it's a very unique model and there is no tax consequence. So so that's another sort of plus for us in terms of our model.
Think that's a huge relief. That's huge relief for people who are getting that letter in the mail saying that they're not only is their medical debt forgiven, but they are not going to be taxed on it.
Yeah.
This is and you all have received, one of the things that was interesting for me to find out about your organization is that the founders are actually debt collection executives, and often they're also villainized. Nobody likes debt collectors. So can you tell me a little bit about their background and how they started this organization?
Yes, I'm so lucky that they started it because I get to do this fun work because of these incredible two guys, Jerry Ashton and
Mhm,
Craig Antico. They are the founders, and they took a big risk in starting this organization too. They went from like a for-profit field to
mhm,
saying, you know what, we want to turn our work towards good. And they started out, and they put together this model where they understood, and this is really important. They came to this work knowing how cheap medical debt could be bought on the market, for
mhm,
particularly for people that are poor, or that the debt is actually much higher than the person's income. I mean, you could be middle income, but if you get a significant debt, you're still not going to be able to pay it, right? So they recognize that, and they understood that those debts were worthless, if you will, in their normal field. Like nobody wants those debts in the secondary market. So then they sort of realized that donors might be interested in actually helping to support that, and this great return on investment. So they set out. They wrote a book, End Medical Debt. You could buy it on our website. Um,
mhm,
I would, if anybody's interested in the topic, I think it's a great overview of the difficulties of medical debt in our country. And so they started RIP. At first, I mean, to be honest, they'll tell you this is story. Like, they struggled. They financially were like taking risks by starting RIP, and themselves going into a little bit of like poverty, trying to figure out how to get this started. And then, the amazing thing happened. John Oliver was interested in the topic and did a show on medical debt, and
mhm.
exposing some of the ridiculousness of medical debt, and mentioned RIP. And then the website crashed, and it's taken off from there, right? It's like the board members came on, funders were interested, and here we are today, and really soaring. And I don't know if you're aware, we also just last month found out that we were the beneficiaries of a $50 million gift from Mackenzie Scott.
Oh,
Um, and so we're really,
congratulations.
really lucky, yeah, to be able to move our model forward.
That's beautiful. And this is something that, I mean, just like really taking uh, knowledge of the industry and using it for good, sort of like almost whistleblowing, and, taking, and this is fascinating because usually, as we were talking about earlier, getting a call from a debt collector, that's the image that people have. So really, just shattering that stereotype, definitely.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I just want to add on to that. Like, look, we buy a lot of our debt from the secondary market, right? Again, I get it. Like, I am not condoning the phone calls and the harassment. Like, there are like everything else. There's good apples and bad apples sometimes, and that's just the way the world is. But there are definitely, not every debt collector or debt buyer is automatically, because you should consider evil, right? I mean, again, they're playing to the situation. They are playing to the for-profit nature of our healthcare system, and a lot of them, look, we wouldn't be able to buy the debts from a lot of the debts we've relieved are because the secondary market realizes that they don't want to harass those people. They'd rather focus on the people who actually do have some kind of income and can pay, than to focus on the people that they're really, going to make significant sacrifices to pay.
Mhm.
And so those partnerships have really let us thrive. And so I just do want to say that the we shouldn't always just automatically paint them all with a bad brush.
Mhm. Yeah, we were trying to take a look at some of the videos on your website that have, so there has been significant coverage, but a lot of times people don't realize that it's easy to connect, and this is some place where, because usually we looked at Goodwill or Red Cross, and that's where the names come up where a lot of these big donations are given. So it's very important to highlight that, especially in our community as well, and try to get some funds together to do this great work. As when and I'm thinking about how families that can really like and thoughts are coming because I see this every day. And we have these WhatsApp groups and little community, text messaging group, chat groups, and a lot of people, especially in the nation's capital, a lot of people are suffering, and a lot of times they don't know where to go, or they don't know what to do. Is there any how would people get involved in this movement? Like, because it is a movement, even though the work is not the same as a hurricane relief organization that goes on, but literally you guys are doing some similar sort of work where it is relief work. So if people wanted to get involved in their own communities and sort of is there an ambassadorship program? Is there something that, like, if they wanted to share, either raise funds or make or doctors' offices aware of this, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah, so one thing I would suggest is we actually just started towards the end of last year, the Medical Debt Relief Alliance. It's a monthly giving program, and you can give any amount, and together, because I think, for an individual, but it's a monthly gift, so it could be $5, it could be $50, it depends on your ability. But what's special about it is it pulls together the support of these individuals that are all interested in coming together and figuring out how to be part of a larger something else, which is what you're getting at. And we do a couple of things with that fund. We don't just focus on medical debt relief, which we do, and that group collectively gets a report that shows like the specific medical debt relief that has been done collectively together. But we also focus on our public policies, right? I mean, this is getting at the systemic nature of this problem. And talking about medical debt, one of the things that we haven't quite launched yet, but that we're really thinking about, and you alluded to this earlier, is helping people to tell their stories about medical debt, to try to get rid of some of those stigmas that are really significant for people. They don't want to tell. It's an embarrassment, and it shouldn't be. And so there's some work to be done there. And it's really like the Medical Debt Relief Alliance that I think will help support us in figuring out how to get to the heart of this issue and move our country forward, while also at the same time doing direct relief to individuals and really supporting them. So I think that's one way of doing it. Certainly people and communities that want to come together are welcome to contact us and think about their own individual campaigns. We're happy to support that as well. So I think there's a lot of different options. And, for me, again, at RIP, we're really thinking about how can we contribute actively to this understanding of medical debt in general in this country, and what can we do to elevate and amplify our voice so that frankly we don't need to exist at some point. I mean, we do need to figure this out, and while what we do is wonderful, it is not a permanent solution to medical debt. I mean, like I said, we've abolished nearly $3 billion of debt, and that's really important, but the numbers are so much higher than that, and we're going to need some.
So true. I mean, when you were talking, I was just thinking of all the different GoFundMes I've seen from families who have put them out, and majority of them are about, paying medical bills.
Yeah.
That they can, and to hear that from, and we go back to that whole nonprofit model or for-profit model health industry that we have, is that for a country that is the world leader, we should not be funding our health bills through GoFundMe.
Agreed.
If you don't mind, I'm going to go over some of the statistics.
Sure.
On medical bankruptcies. Like, the average age of a person who goes through a medical bankruptcy is 44.9 years old. That's like my age, and this is according to the American Journal of Medicine. So a lot of times people think, oh, you only go through this when you're older, or you have like all these terrible, when age-related elderly might be the focus of this, or be like a typical person who goes through a medical bankruptcy. But no, it's someone our age. Among people who experience a medical bankruptcy, 46% are married. 60% have attended college. So just this could be any one of us. Not that it should matter that what age we are at when this happens, but really it could be any one of us. The average monthly household income for medical bankruptcy filers is $2,500 to $3,000 a month. This is 2009 data, so if we inflate it a little bit, maybe $3,500 a month. And among families, this is terribly heartbreaking, who experience medical bankruptcies, 20% are military families.
Wow.
So not only are we sending them off to fight wars for us, they come back home and are not provided with medical care. So these are some of the statistics that really stood out for me. Would you like to add to this?
Sure, sure. Well, and let me just comment on the veterans point, because I will say that the founders really thought about veterans in particular, and that has been a big focus of ours, is specifically to alleviate the debt of veterans because of exactly what you said. Yeah, I have a couple of other statistics that are people want to be really depressed. I mentioned a couple of these already, but I think some of them in particular are related to the impact by race of the situation too. So like Black and brown people make up 2/3 of US COVID-19 deaths under the age of 65. In the US, close to 22,000 people of color would be alive as of December 2020 if their community's mortality rates were the same as that of white people. There's, according to the World Bank, the global financial downturn linked to COVID-19, between 88 and 115 million more people will be pushed into extreme poverty just in 2020 alone. And just I think it was earlier this week that Bloomberg reported that 2020 brought the sharpest rise in poverty since the 1960s. And of course, again, going back to the racial dynamics, that Black Americans were more than twice as likely to be poor as their white counterparts in December. And so, this is the financial impact is substantial of medical debt, and obviously the health outcomes too, which is why I say the word health equity here.
Definitely, so important, and a lot of times it is children's illnesses that families end up in such debt is because their children are sick, and especially when they're chronic illnesses that will last many, many, many years. Those are the sort of bills that just keep on piling up, and
you're going to do anything for your kids. We all know it. You do anything for your kids. I mean, you'll cut off your own right arm, to make sure your kid's healthy. I mean, that's just what the nature of parenting is. So you certainly will make poor financial decisions, although are they? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about health. And so I feel like it's very hard to put a price on health, but yet that's what we do in this country.
That is so absolutely true. I'm so grateful for you to be here and for being a part of this show. And we urge everybody to do visit the website. The name is RIP Medical Debt, ripmedicaldebt.org. Please do go and visit the website, find out how you can get involved, spread the word. This is the sort of work that really needs to be highlighted. And, just a way for those of us who are privileged enough, who do not, maybe not be in that situation, to help out those in our country who are facing this. And, I pray none of us are ever in that position. But please, anything else that you'd like to share, Allison, before we wind up the hour?
I just want to thank you so much for highlighting our work, and to thank everyone in your audience for taking time to listen to this. And yeah, I encourage you to check us out. I mean, to get resources for yourself as an individual, to come up, and be part of the community in terms of helping to solve this problem. And, I hope that RIP Medical Debt will not have to exist in a number of years from now because we figured out how to address the medical debt problem. But in the meantime, I will be here fighting every day to make sure that we can get our hands on as much medical debt as possible, and alleviate those debts for individuals.
Thank you so much. And to those of you watching, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be discussing some major topics in the coming up week. We hope you can join us. We will be having a show on Yemen, lots of big policy changes coming from Washington, D.C. on Yemen and on the U.S. funding of the Saudi war against the people of Yemen. We also wanted to make sure that you have been a part of the series that we've been hosting at Justice for All on the rise in Hindutva ideology here in United States and in Canada. If you missed the first teach-in that was held last night, please do visit www.justiceforall.org/Hindutva teach-in. Very important to learn about this ideology, just to make sure you know the difference between real Hinduism and Hindutva ideology. Also coming up, February 5th is Kashmir Solidarity Day, and we do want to remind you all to please join us in the rally that we're holding in solidarity with the Kashmiri people on February 5th at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can sign up for it at www.justiceforall.org/events. Please continue to support our work. Continue to watch Muslim Network TV. I'm grateful to my producers, Abdul Wahid, Wahid Mir, and Miriam Tisdale for the work that they put into this program. Thank you all for the time that you give to us. And do continue to check out other shows. We have a lot of children's programming, Adam's World Club, that has some absolutely fabulous puppet shows and ways to teach your children how to be a better citizen, how to be a better human being, and to live a true Muslim lifestyle right here in the United States. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.